What's up, everybody? Good morning, and welcome to a slightly earlier edition of Coast to Coast College Football Pregame Show. We made it. We are episode 14, week 13 in the college schedule, rivalry week. Two people on the show would tell you it's the only week that really matters this year.
Facts.
But we are here. We've made it. It's a beautiful Saturday morning. It's a beautiful Saturday morning for some football. I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope everybody ate a lot of food. But we're going to get right into it today. I'm your host, Bill Shawcross, as always. Call me Uncle Shally. Call me Under the Weather Shally. Overstuffed Shally from Thanksgiving. But I don't miss shows. Neither do either of the two gentlemen that are going to co-host with me, as always, today. First off, my mortal enemy for this morning and this afternoon, but still my Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic today. Had a great weekend so far, and I'm waiting on it to continue here very shortly.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the reality of it is one of us is going to have a good afternoon and one of us is not. So that is the stark reality of rivalry week, but that's what makes it so great. But before we get going, I have to introduce our Mr. West Coast himself, Mr. Happy Duck, Mr. COVID, and Mr. Eye Black, Alex Elmore. How are you doing, sir?
I felt better. I've had better days, my friend, but that's right. We're still here. I'm no sick days on this show. All right. This is important. I'm bringing all the facts, all the stats, and I can be as sick as a dog. I do not care. Oregon demolished Oregon State last night, so I'm feeling amazing. I did not need a cup of coffee this morning. I just woke up, checked the scores, and I was like, oh, yeah, I'm feeling good. So thanks for having me. Excuse my coughs and my frequent mutes today, but we're going to get through this show. We're going to see how the Ohio State-Michigan game lines up, and a lot of action to bring you guys today.
Yeah, so we are going to hop into it because we do a jam-packed show. We have to go over last week's results as always, plus last night's. Last night's game because there was a big game last night. We'll go over the rankings, college football eliminator as always, which has become the hottest segment of the show. Was there movement? That is the big question. One person hopes there is. Was Uncle Shally convinced? We'll see when we get there. We'll do the previews for the rest of today for all the big rivalry games today as well. And then Picke Em. So, one of our hosts is already 1-0 for Picke Em this weekend. So, actually, two. That's right. You picked two. So, yeah, all right, yeah. So, good early start to Picke Em. But let's hop right into it because we do got to get going here because we have a lot for you guys today.
All right. So, 1 second here. Get this all pulled up. Who else is 1-0? Who got a game?
I had Penn State covered against Michigan State.
Yeah. Well, that game was a disaster. Everybody beats up on Michigan State, though.
True.
Little brother.
All right. So.
Come on, graphics boy. Let's go.
It's just taking forever, man. I can't.
Live TV, man. Live TV.
I don't know what to tell you. It's just doesn't want to come up. But let's see.
All right. Well, I'll ask this while producer Simpson here is getting his act together.
It's not me. No, we're ready. We're ready.
Are we ready?
It's in here.
All right. We're going to recaps. Arizona might be they might be just the hottest team in the country right now. Against Utah. Week? Yeah. 42-18. I'll be 100% honest. I didn't think this game was going to be this far apart. I did pick Arizona, who was a 1.5-point dog at home to cover. I love being on that side of it. I did not see 42-18 coming out of this whatsoever. This was the first game to me where Utah kind of looked like the weight of the season and staying in all these close games and not playing without their star quarterback all year. I felt like the world came crashing down on them in this game. And Arizona just played a great football game at home. A pretty good defense, bend but don't break. Bryson Barnes had if you look at the numbers, had a decent day. A lot of that was at the end when they were just throwing the ball every down. They couldn't get the run game going early. And Arizona looked great against that Utah defense. But like I said, to me, the parts of the game I saw, Utah, they just look tired to me. They just look like they finally hit the end of playing at max effort all year. I don't know what you guys saw. If you guys saw something different, Arizona's a good football team, a real good football team. They're not. Obviously they didn't make the Pac-12 championship game. They're going to make a pretty decent bowl game. And I'd be really curious to see who they get matched up with because they might beat a really big program that's going to take them lightly. But what do you guys think of this game? What do you finally think of the end of Utah's kind of solid run this year? And what do you think? What do you think the ceiling is for Arizona going forward the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean, with Utah especially, it almost seems as if, throughout the year they were able to run the ball really well with Jaquindon Jackson. The last few weeks, he has just not been getting those holes opened up. Just like you said, is that depth at offensive line or that lack of depth of offensive line? Was that a key factor with Utah's kind of ultimate demise towards the end of the season, where guys getting too tired? We're not really sure. But ultimately, teams kind of just like loaded the box and said, you know what, Bryson Barnes is going to have to beat us because we're not going to let Jaquindon Jackson do it because he can beat us with his legs. He actually finally averaged over 4 yards a carry last week. Only got 10 carries. The majority of the carries are Bryson Barnes with 19 carries, and you got to give your workhorse back the ball, even down this much. Just like Oregon State last year, they came back down 21 points, having 28 straight run plays. So Utah kind of got away from their bread and butter a little bit this game, and things started to spiral quite quickly. I mean, Arizona, they were at home. Their fans were absolutely going crazy in this game. They were not going to let Utah get a second of a breath in. And I really liked how Arizona kind of just took care of business. They put the pedal to the floor, and they did not let off until the final whistle blew. I'm excited to see where they go, especially with Oregon and Washington most likely getting into the college football playoff. That's going to open things up for them with a better bowl going forward. But Arizona, I'm excited. They're playing Arizona State today. I would have loved to see Arizona make it to the Pac-12 championship game against Oregon because they did not play this year. I think that would be a great game. But ultimately, the cookies crumbled though they will, and we're going to be facing Washington. But Arizona had a fantastic year. They got to finish it up today against Arizona State and then see where the chips lie. But so Utah, great season. Kind of like Bill said, though, just did not have enough steam to get to the end of the year. And ultimately, they just look tired. You're right. And Arizona is hot at the right time.
Yeah, Utah is one of those teams where, you really didn't know what Utah team you were going to be getting week in and week out. You knew consistently that they were going to give you 110% effort on defense. And you knew that depending on the week, depending on what defense they were playing, their offense might look explosive and it might look a little clogged up. And this was one of those weeks where it looked a little bit more clogged up. Bryson Barnes isn't one of those, high profile names where he's going to go light the world on fire. You've seen games where he has had some success. That's not to discredit him at all. The game against Washington, he played well. And then there were other games as well where Bryson, did what he had to do. But at the end of the day, I knew that Utah team and the way that their offense looked without Cam Rising, they weren't going to be serious contenders at this point. And they ran into a team in Arizona that, like Bill said, they're one of the hottest teams in the country. They really came out of nowhere, and they've been dominant. As far as their ceiling goes, I mean, I think they could potentially sneak into, a New Year's Day bowl just because, Oregon and Washington are going to battle it out for that college football playoff spot at this point. And then the loser of that game, yeah, they're probably slated in one of the other New Year's 6 games. But Arizona could be a team that's, depending on how things shake out, I think they could potentially find themselves in one of those bigger bowl games.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot is going to depend on obviously what happens later today, and then what ends up happening with the loser of Washington, Oregon. They might be able to sneak into one though. And again, I mean, it's one of those teams that's on the rise, and if they can get them into one of the bigger bowl games out west, I mean, they're obviously going to draw really well. So, it was a surprising result to me. Not that Arizona won, just that they kind of dominated. Like Utah wasn't really in the game. That was the surprising part to me. Like I said, it just looked like Utah. It just reached the finish line. And they were like, and it's hard to do that all year. And I give those kids credit because, I mean, we came on here week after week and we were like, you know, I don't know if they're going to win, but they're going to play them tough. And they just kept beating team after team after team. Went to Oregon, you know, the only team that stayed within a touchdown of those guys. Like they just played great football all year, and they were just kind of that one guy short. And that's a shame. But you know, that is the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. So Arizona, huge win for them. Utah, I think, will be happy to take a couple weeks off and, you know, kind of recuperate and get ready for, you know, for bowl season. Because that will be a team, you know, with a couple weeks rest and a couple more weeks of coaching that nobody will want to see come bowl season. And we saw that last year with Ohio State in that Rose Bowl, which was one of the best Rose Bowls ever. When they show up to play, they show up to play. So we will see. I'll be really curious to see where both these teams end up. What's the name of this bowl game or rivalry game, Cottrell? The Sunflower what?
Sunflower something.
Something. We still don't care.
Sunflower something.
That's a damn shame. Kansas State 31, Kansas 27.
It's called the Sunflower Showdown. Which actually sounds a little bit better. Just throw Showdown in there, and it sounds a little better.
It does.
Yeah, I guess if you say so.
Kansas. Go ahead.
I was going to say this game here. Kansas is just one of those teams where I feel like they have such terrible luck. They're a football program that they've really come out of nowhere these last couple years. And obviously, you know, Jalen Daniels is a big part of that and what he can bring to a team. But even like this year, like Kansas finds a way into the rankings. Jalen Daniels really hasn't played for the better half of the back half of the season.
That's the second half he's barely played.
And, you know, their backup quarterback, he hadn't been great by any means, but he was keeping them in games and, you know, they were still finding ways to be competitive. And then he gets a concussion, and now their third string's playing. And even still, again, didn't play great, but against this Kansas State team, they lost by 4 points, and they got, you know, very inconsistent quarterback play. So I feel like Kansas is one of those teams that's really on the rise here. They just got to have some luck fall their way at some point, man. Like, well coached, they're doing things the right way. They run the ball well. They compete hard every single game. They just can't get the guy to stay healthy at the number one position in the game.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. I mean, we saw him play last year, and you saw how special and dynamic he was, which is, you know, makes you even wonder how he ended up at Kansas to begin with, how nobody else recruited him. But a lot of what Cottrell just said is true. I think the scary part is their head coach now. His name is coming up in every head coaching vacancy in the country. So you know, he's kind of put the pieces back together after the Les Miles debacle down there. Who, in his defense, was starting to recruit there. I'd actually be curious to see if Daniels was one of his recruits. He might have been, because that would actually kind of make sense to me. But you know, he's got this. Listen, Kansas is always going to be a basketball school, but for them, the last 2 years, that, you know, kind of like Cottrell said, they're not the bottom feeders of the Big 12 anymore. It's not, you know, you don't look at your schedule and go, Kansas, we're going to win that game by 30. That's not the case anymore. They're starting to recruit better. The fans, you know, the students are getting behind the team. As bad a luck as Cottrell just mentioned in this game, they were winning or tied most of this game. Kansas State has a really bad knack of playing really bad in the first half and then playing comeback football in the second half all the time. You saw it last week against Texas, and they just couldn't finish it at the end. But they came back and got in front, and, you know, this was a really good football game. I watched 90% of this game, actually, when it was on live. Will Howard is just a gritty, like, he almost reminds me of Max Duggan from TCU last year. A pretty good athlete, not an overwhelmingly, you know, technically good quarterback, but he's gritty, he's a gamer, and everybody on his offense plays for him. And that's dangerous sometimes. But Kansas State pulled out a big win. Again, this is another one of those games that this probably elevates Kansas State to a better bowl game. Not a New Year's Six or anything like that, obviously, but a more top shelf bowl game. Kansas is already bowl eligible. They're another team that will, try to get healthy and obviously try to get Daniels ready to play. And again, they're another team come bowl, come selection Sunday, you get paired up with them. You might be like, oh, all right, cool. We got Kansas. You won't want to play them when game time comes. They're a good football team. They're solid. They still have holes. They don't have a ton of depth, which is what's really killing them right now. But if all their starters decide to show up and play, they're a very good football team.
Yeah, I mean, Cole Ballard really kind of showed what the future of the Kansas program can really look like, being the true freshman that he is. And Kansas honestly came out, and I thought Kansas State was going to kind of run away with this game with Cole Ballard starting for Kansas. I thought that the pressure would be too much for him, but it really wasn't. He threw a couple interceptions, and ultimately the difference in this game was the 3 turnovers that Kansas had. They just came at the wrong times, and Kansas State was able to capitalize. Devin Neal, a steady dose. It was really a first running back. DJ Giddens with 102 yards, and Devin Neal, kind of being the workhorse that he is with 18 carries, 138 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I said last week that Devin Neal is Kansas's only chance to really win this game, and he really did show out. So kind of like Bill said, Kansas is one of those teams that they're fun to watch. It doesn't matter who they play. Texas, I fully believe if they played Bama, they'd make it a good game. I'm not saying that they'd win. I'm saying, like, no matter who they play, they're in the game. They're competing. Their coaches are finding, caveats in the defense that they're able to expose. So Kansas is a fun team, and they're really, truly always in the game. And honestly, a bowl matchup I would love to see, Kansas, Arizona. I don't know if that will actually happen. Probably not. Chances of it happening very, very slim, but that'd be a really good matchup to watch, Kansas versus Arizona. But, like I said, pretty cut and dry. Kansas State came through when they needed to, and they are the Sunflower champions, I guess you could say.
Sunflower Showdown champions. Put some respect on that rivalry
Showdown
game.
champions.
Here's the first I told you so game of the morning.
Boom, boom, boom.
Boom, boom, boom. Gino bought into the old Tennessee hype train from last year and thought we were going to recreate the old dumping of the goalpost in the river. I told you that wasn't going to happen. Tennessee is not good. We'll get into that more because I know Cottrell feels strongly about something regarding them in a little bit. Listen, I hate to say it, Georgia looks like Georgia from the last 2 years. Maybe not as defensively dominant. I will tell you this. This is the scary part to me. This is something, if you want to be honest and you want to look at it, they are a better offense with Carson Beck than they were with Stetson Bennett. They're more dynamic. I think Stetson Bennett was really good with staying within the script and making throws, and he was a very good college quarterback. I'm not saying he was a game manager or anything like that, but there were certain things that he couldn't do. To me, the dangerous part about watching Georgia right now, it doesn't look like they have any restrictions on the playbook whatsoever. Like they can just turn to page 32 and be like, run that. Carson Beck can run that. They look very dynamic. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. They can throw the ball short. They can throw the ball deep. They can throw the ball over the middle. Georgia looks like Georgia all of a sudden. We kind of all thought they were kind of, I don't want to say sleepwalking, but they were because they really hadn't played anybody, and we didn't really know what they were. Then the rankings came out. I feel like they started playing for real. They've looked dominant the last 4 weeks. Dominant. Every bit of the number 1 team in the country. Every bit of the team who's the defending back-to-back national champions. Georgia's a very good football team. That being said, like I said, I think some of the more elite teams in the country, the Ohio States, the Michigans, the Oregons, a couple other teams, I think they can be had defensively this year. But that offense looks damn good. I know Tennessee's not what they were last year, but to still go into Neyland Stadium and spank them 38-10. Tennessee was never in this game. They were in this game for about 7 minutes, and that was it. I don't know. I felt a certain way a lot of the year about. I really thought the winner of the game later today had a good shot to beat Georgia, and I don't know if that's the case anymore. And that's including my team. They look damn good.
definitely looked good. I think the one thing for me though is, I don't want to put too much stock in this game. I think the Missouri win, the Ole Miss win, definitely mean a lot more than this because, as Bill kind of alluded to, I'm not a big Tennessee fan this year. I understand that they do have some talent on that team, but this isn't the team that America really fell in love with from last year. They
No.
don't have all of that talent left, and they haven't played anybody. So I didn't, last week, I know we talked about it on the show because me and Bill both picked Georgia to cover that 10 points, and I thought they would cover pretty easily, and obviously they did. But I don't know how Vegas thought that that would be a 10.5 point spread. Like, if you had watched Tennessee all season, and if you watched them just the previous week play Missouri, you knew Georgia was going to beat them by at least 17 points. Now I understand, you don't want to make Tennessee a 17-point dog at home because you're going to have all the money flocking in, but that's where that line really should have been. And yeah, they would have covered that too, but that 10-point spread was very odd to me if you watch both teams play. Now, the one thing that I will say about Georgia is the one thing that I don't want to happen. Them getting Kendall Milton involved in this offense and him having success and having like a 1-2 punch with him and Dejon Edwards, who didn't have a great game in this one. But if those two guys are being successful and they can just kind of plug and play, and whoever has the hot hand just goes and gets after it, plus Ladd and plus Brock with Carson playing like this, you're 100% right, Bill. They're going to be a tough out offensively. Now, defensively, I do think, you can take your shots against them. I think the one glaring deficiency for them, I've said it all year, that read option stuff where quarterbacks are mobile, that's going to be their kryptonite moving forward. And so I think the SEC championship game, without looking too far ahead here, that's going to be that true test because Jalen Milroe will be on the move. So seeing how they defend that'll determine after that game who I think wins national championship this year. I'll say that. But Georgia has looked absolutely phenomenal. And, I'm with you in the sense that right now, I thought this would be a year where Georgia was a little bit more down. Knew they would go undefeated because I thought their schedule was light.
Agreed.
I haven't expected them to look like this, though.
Agreed. I think the look ahead line for that game is interesting to me. If you look at the Ducks, the Ducks are a 7.5-point favorite over Washington. Michigan and Ohio State are both 21.5-point favorites over Iowa, depending who wins later today. The Georgia-Alabama game is 4.5. Some people have it at 4. I saw somebody have it at 3.5 earlier. It's going to be a hell of a game. But go ahead, Alex. I didn't mean to cut you off, bud.
No, you're good, man. Yeah, I was just going to say, kind of like the same sentiments that you guys have been carrying. Georgia absolutely dominated Tennessee. If Tennessee can't get it up to keep this game close against the number one team in the nation, then who can they get it up for? I had to finish it, Cottrell. I had to finish it.
That's personal.
2 for 11 on third downs. That's not how you win a game, especially in front of your home crowd against the number one team in the nation. Everyone's hype. That place was rocking because everyone in that building, if I was a Tennessee fan, I would have been like, we're taking down Georgia, as any fan would. So Tennessee really did not come out and show out for their fans. They had the ball 19 minutes. Okay. Georgia controlled the ball for 41 minutes of this game. Tennessee only scored 10 points. Jalen Wright was having an amazing game, averaging 10 yards per carry. And on the day, they actually averaged 5.2 yards per carry on the ground. Problem is, Georgia jumped out so fast, they had to get away from that game plan really quick. Ladd McConkey did not play, so I have to kind of do a little research on seeing what's going on with him. And Brock Bowers did limp off towards the end of the game, so they are talking about putting him on a pitch count. I don't know if you guys saw a similar report. Obviously, I'm not really worried about them impacting anything, especially against Georgia Tech today. But it'll be interesting to see how they play today, see how they kind of keep people on and off the field, getting ready for next week against Alabama. But Georgia took care of business and did what they should have done. So,
if Georgia's smart, Brock Bowers does not put his pads on today because they don't need him to against Georgia Tech. Listen, this is what you hit on the big one: time of possession. Tennessee ran the ball the first two drives. Jalen Wright probably had 70 of his 90 yards in the first two drives. Georgia couldn't stop them. They went down and scored. It was a 7-7 game at one point. And then Georgia was like, okay, we're going to do what everybody else has done this year. We're going to stack the box, and we're going to make freaking Joe Milton beat us. And that was the end of the goddamn game. His numbers don't look awful there, but I'm telling you, 17 of 30 for 255, and most of them were dump offs and checkdowns for 4 or 5 yards. You're not going to beat Georgia that way. And that's what he did all day, and it didn't work. Georgia's like, we're going to take the run away from you. And that's what happened. And then Georgia was like, see ya. Boat raced them at home. How are the Vostok? Justin, we're going to get to that. And PD's 100% right. This game, it's a good football game. It's a good football game. This is also a mirror of, we're going to get into this because this is kind of a double-sided conversation now because of last night. But Washington went in and listen, you got to give them credit. They went into a very hostile environment and won a football game. They did just enough to win. Oregon State long snapper is still on suicide watch, I think, somewhere. I don't know. The safety ended up being the difference in the game. But Michael Penix did just enough. Look at his numbers, though. Not impressive. Under 50% completion, completion percentage. This, in my opinion, this is a weird conversation. This benefited Washington in the short term with the rankings, which we'll get into here in a second. I thought Oregon State for a lot of this game was just as good, if not better, than Washington, and they just couldn't get the big play when they needed to. DJ wasn't great. DJ needed to hit one big pass somewhere, and I think Oregon State could have won this game. I think Oregon State had opportunities to win this game. I think this is another game where Washington held on. And eventually you just run out of those, you run out of those miracles, per se. Yeah, you got to give them credit. They won the game. The final score is the only thing that matters, but this has just been I don't want to say it's been a narrative because I think it's true, and I think you're going to see it next week. They've just been getting by, and that's not something that if you're a team that has national title or even Pac-12 champion, championship, inspirations to do, you got to beat people. And I feel like I said, when we talk about Washington too much, it's, Cottrell came up with the term earlier this year, begging to get beat. And I feel like that we're still there with them. Like we're still begging to get beat or just hanging on. And if you're the number 4 or 5 team in the country and you think you was shot at winning the national title, that should not be the narrative around your team. It should be like Georgia. It should be like, Alabama, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State. It should be you're going out every weekend and you're beating opponents into the dirt. And we even said that about Washington a month and a half. I don't know. Alex, what do you think?
Yeah, this was the second time that they played an Oregon team that they necessarily didn't look like the better team, but they did enough to pull out the win. That's really what matters. In the second quarter or first quarter, when was it? I don't remember. Head's all COVID-y. But when they did when they did have the long snap issue, that did result in the safety. I thought to myself, that's going to come back and bite them. I didn't think that was going to be the deciding points. I think it would play a factor. I didn't think that the winning margin would be the 2 points, though. If you look at the stats, without the score, it looks like Oregon State absolutely dominated this game. They outgained Washington by 40 yards. They outpassed them. They outrushed them. Their averages were higher. Washington won where it counted, though, forcing 3 turnovers. DJU throwing 2 of those interceptions. Michael Penix looked average. Dylan Johnson didn't go off like crazy. The game was an absolute torrential downpour. It was not, it was ideal football conditions for hardcore football fans. But the offenses weren't able to quite get it going with the type of weather that they were facing. And I was waiting for Oregon State to pull it out. Damian Martinez absolutely went off, and he had me a little worried for the Oregon State game last night, thinking that he would do the same similar to what he did last year. And we were able to kind of control him and keep him down to under 50 yards. But when I said this game was great, Oregon State there, that's a tough place to play. I'm glad we played in Austin last night. Washington came to town, took care of business. And I'm excited for next weekend, gents. I'm not going to lie to you.
I think the one key piece that you guys are kind of missing here is that they were playing in a monsoon, and I know both teams had to play in it. A monsoon is a bit of a stretch, but they were playing in a nice rain game.
That's the average rain
You
in Oregon, bro.
saw
That's a Tuesday night.
but you saw how the ball was coming out on both sides, though. Like you saw the amount of fumbles that were in that game. Players weren't able to hold on to the ball; it was slipping out of everywhere. So, like, I look at Michael Penix Jr.'s numbers, and it's like, yeah, he only completed 50% of his passes, but I'm also going to put it in perspective of what that game looked like. You look at DJ; he was same around 50% as well, and he had two picks, and I'm not excusing those, but at the end of the day, the weather there was not great. So I can't look at that as like the end all be all for Washington, because next week when they play Oregon again, they're going to be in a dome. They're going to be in Las Vegas. There's going to be perfect conditions on both sides of the ball, and they're going to be able to air it out yet again. Now I know we're going to go into our conference breakdowns, championships breakdowns next week, but it's no secret about it. All three of us have Oregon winning the Pac-12 this year. Like, we think that they're going to avenge that loss from earlier in the season. But I don't want to discredit what this Washington team has done, only because, especially in this game particularly, because yes, they did Oregon State look better than them? Yes, they have a better run game than them. So they look better because Daniel Martinez was looking very productive. They still found a way to win. And what Washington did, game on the line, they look number one ways because he is the best player not named Michael Penix Jr. on their team. Romo Dunze put the team on his back. Whenever they needed a big play, they went to him. Obviously, he scored 2 touchdowns, and he converted the fourth down to put this game away. They went to his side. He was singled up. They said, hey, our guy's better than your guy. We're going to go to him, and we're going to win this football game. So, as much as I think Oregon is going to win next week without getting, again, not too far ahead here, I think Washington is still very much alive here.
Listen, yeah, and I don't want it to come off that they're not a good football team, because they are. I mean, they're ranked 4th in the country, and they've had a great year. Michael Penix, was the Heisman frontrunner for 8 or 9 weeks of the year. But again, I think this time of year for me, I don't want my team, and we can use the weather. We can say the weather, but Oregon State played in the weather too. So I mean, it's not like Oregon
They did
State
play in the weather, but they looked exactly the same as my thing.
I get it. So if we go to a dry field, I mean, you might get the same. You might get the same game. That's my point. The difference is you look at teams down the stretch. Georgia just dismantled, Tennessee. Ohio State and Michigan have pretty much been unscathed down the stretch, and that's playing better football teams. Alabama's punishing everybody. Oregon's punishing everybody. Florida State, until last week, for the most part, was comfortably winning. Washington's the one that hasn't been. And again, I'm not taking anything away, because at the end of the day, like all three of us said, they're still undefeated. They have a 0 next to their name. But again, if I was a Washington fan, I'd feel more comfortable if I was like, oh, cool, Washington won by 21 again. Like, they're eking out wins, and eventually it just runs out. It's high stress football, and eventually you're just going to run out of that. I don't want to say luck, but you're just going to run up against it eventually, and we'll see. I mean, we're getting the rematch, so we all want it. So, and I'm glad that one worked out the right way, because I think we can all agree Washington and Oregon are the best 2 teams in the Pac-12. But we'll see what happens. They're going to have their chance to shine. Maybe they shock the world next weekend. We'll see. All right. We're going to go to rankings recap here. Finally had some movement, based upon the game we just talked about. And this is kind of what, for the most part, I think we kind of all expected. Florida State, I believe, who did they play last week? Miami. Played Miami. They won the game. Tighter game.
North Alabama.
Oh, that's where they killed somebody. Yeah.
Jordan Travis got hurt.
His ankle looked rough.
Yeah, it's never good when you're ankle is pointing a different direction in your body.
Left turn signal.
Hockey stick.
But yeah, but this is kind of what we expected at the top. Obviously, 2 and 3 are going to take care of themselves later this afternoon. We thought Washington playing, pretty much a top 12 or top, I think they were 11 at that time. Ranked team. If they won away, they were probably going to jump Florida State, and they did, and deservingly so. They're debatably, the best team in the second or third best conference in the country. They deserve to be there. So that move finally happened. I think it's a little concerning for Florida State because if they somehow, figure out how to run the table, it's going to be really. We had this debate on Wednesday. It gets real interesting. Because to me, that's saying, well, obviously, they've already shown you if Washington wins, if Washington beats Oregon next week, they're in, and obviously they should be. It gets interesting if Florida State runs a table without Jordan Travis, if they pull that off, and Oregon wins next week. What do they do? That's where it gets real interesting. Because I'm the firm believer if Florida State is sitting there 13-0 with the ACC championship, there is no way you can't put them in.
It's all about money, Bill. It's all about money, and you're not going to Jordan Travis-less Florida State is not going to pull in the kind of money next to Oregon Duck team will.
Stop it.
Absolutely.
Stop
There's so much money. Oregon Duck fans travel. They said they talked about it on College Game Day earlier in the week, or I forgot what show it was. They were saying that Florida State, they have to look at that injury and they have to consider that when it comes
Of course,
they do. But
of course you have to look at it. But you also talk about how conference championships matter and schedules matter. There's no way they're putting Oregon in over Florida State if they're undefeated. There's absolutely no way that that's happening.
Because here's what you have to look at. I get the Jordan Travis thing. Florida is not a normal Florida team. I still think that's a tough game tonight, but I could see them losing that football game. But if they win that game and they go beat the number 10th ranked team in the country in Louisville on a neutral field, the whole Jordan Travis thing kind of loses a lot of steam, that excuse. And again, it's what you do and what what the kids have earned and deserve. If a team is 13-0 in one of the major Power 5 conferences, has a conference championship, and no losses, and a pretty good schedule that they played, there is no shot that team is not getting in the Final Four. And listen, I get Oregon fans travel, but so do Georgia fans. Ohio State and Michigan travel. Like no matter where they go, their fans will show up. Florida State has a lot of fans too. They will travel as well. Like there's nobody, honestly, in the top 8 that doesn't travel well. All 8 of those teams will sell out their students, their allotment of tickets in 10 seconds. So I don't want to hear the money thing because it's not like Florida State's not a draw. So you guys, listen, I hate to say it, but you guys had your shot to not be in this position and you didn't win. And that's the cruel part of only 4 teams getting in the playoff. Because I would love, I'll tell you this, who's 12? Ole Miss, Penn State. If Ole Miss is the worst team that makes the playoff this year, if we were in the 12 team, this would be a great playoff. Because I think Penn State and Ole Miss at 11 and 12 would give a lot of these teams trouble. We've already seen Penn State play both Ohio State and Michigan. They can hang in the game with anybody. But, only 4 teams are going to get in. And you can't penalize. You can't penalize Florida State for going undefeated because you guys have a loss. It's just not the way it works.
No, but if they go to the college football playoff and they lose by 55 with a backup quarterback.
But we've seen it happen in the past, though. Like Ohio State in the first ever college football playoff, they had their 3rd string quarterback ultimately make it to the playoff, and they ended up winning the national championship. So you can't just write a team off because their quarterback gets hurt. Like I understand the sentiment with it. If it was a case where Florida State was also, 12-1 and they had just won their conference, I'm 100% behind you and I can see that argument. But if they go out there and they win 2 games against the Florida team that's they're not that good, but then they go out there and beat number 10 Louisville the following week with that backup quarterback, I don't know how I can justify them not making the playoff because at that point it's like, hey, if they lose by, 50 in the playoff, chances are they probably would have looked like that even with Jordan Travis. Might not have been as bad, but that's the same kind of sentiment there. So
Yeah.
I think the committee can be okay with whatever happens to Florida State in the playoff if they handle business against Louisville. Like, I think it would be a completely different argument as well if they weren't playing the Louisville. They were playing 24 ranked Clemson or something like that. But you're facing a top 10 team for your conference championship and you're undefeated. I think you're going to find a way to make it into the playoff. And I don't think, you won't get pushback out of anybody outside of Oregon.
And I'll tell you this, Alex, and I'll be 100% honest with you. I think Oregon's a better football team. I think Oregon's a better football
Agreed.
team with Jordan Travis if he's playing. And sign me up for Georgia, Oregon all day. I'll take that all day. That's the game. That's the game I'd rather see. And I'll be 100% honest, and I'll shout it from the top of the trees. But it's what you do, and what is who is the most deserving. That is literally in the mission statement of the College Football Playoff Committee. 13-0 team with a conference championship. You just can't leave them out. You can't.
To be honest, Alex, I'm rooting for y'all. Like, if y'all beat, when y'all beat Washington, I'm rooting for it to be Georgia, Ohio State, Florida State, and then Oregon, because I think I'd be very confident going up against that Florida State team, and I really think you guys would give Georgia the most run of their money. I talk about their deficiencies and how I think their weaknesses can be exploited. You guys have the perfect offense to exploit all of that. Not to mention the familiarity with Dan Lanning, and a lot of those guys that played on the team now, they have that bad taste in their mouth from last season. So I would love to see Oregon go in there at that 4 spot. The narrative behind Dan Lanning in Georgia being back and all that, sign me up for that.
Hey, I'm all for it.
I mean, I support the same thing, minus obviously flip out Michigan for Ohio State. So, I think we would all enjoy that matchup to get into the national title game. But we're gonna see what's gonna happen. I mean, other than that, I'll touch on this real quick. Tennessee still being ranked is a joke.
Okay, devil's advocate. 3 of their 4 losses are the top 15 teams at the time of their loss. So I'm just saying,
who's their best win?
Getting blown out in those games, losing just because you lose to teams that are good, that doesn't give you a ticket to get blown out in all of those games. And your best win being Kentucky all season doesn't give you credence to be number 21.
I'm tired of hearing. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, go ahead, Bill, because I got something that's separate.
I was going to say, I'm tired of and this is my thing with Oregon. It's not always just about who you lose to. It's also got to be about who you beat. And if you played 4 good football teams all year, and like Charles said, 3 of the 4 dog walk you, and then you go back and I go down your list, and the only even remotely decent win you have is Kentucky, you're not a top 25 team. I don't care. This is the SEC bias at its finest. You got smoked last week again by Georgia, and you only fall 3 spots? You lost by 28 on your home turf. It's a joke. And Kentucky at one point this year was ranked, and that's what everybody's like, oh, well, they were ranked. Cool. Kentucky's lost 5 of 6. They won 1 or 2 games since then. Kentucky's not good. They're a 500 SEC team. That doesn't get you ranked in the top 25. I'm just tired of Clemson. Clemson shouldn't be ranked. They're the next team on my hit list.
Not gonna lie to you. After looking at it as well, NC State has no business being here either.
Agreed. And again, you're seeing it just for certain reasons. You're getting the bias of the Power 5 in that room to sneak these teams in, like Coastal Carolina or not Coastal Carolina, Tulane just keeps beating people, and they move up 1 spot maybe, and then if some other big team they need to push in here next week, they'll win. They actually, I think they won. They won last night. They'll go backwards next week. Watch, they will somehow go backwards. They're 10-1 and they'll go backwards. Am I saying they're a top 10 team? No, But like you look at these guys, like Liberty, people like that, like these teams should all have a chance. Like James Madison, which Cottrell's been on that train all year, and he's 100% right. Like ranking these teams doesn't screw anything up for anybody else. And that's the part that people don't get. Like if NC State's ranked 27th and not in the top 25, and you put James Madison at 25, that doesn't change the bowl game for NC State. It's not going to change anything for them. Like nothing at all. Like if these smaller schools deserve it, let them be ranked from 20 to 25. Like it doesn't change anything for these big programs. Clemson's going to go to the same bowl game if they're ranked 24th or if they're ranked 30th. It has nothing to do with where you are in the rankings. It all depends on where you finish in the order of your conference and what bowl games have what pick and what they're going to do. Like I'm so tired of hearing that argument. It's unequivocally false. It has nothing to do with anything. Like these BS like who's NC State beat to be ranked?
NC
Their best one is Clemson. I will give them that, but it was 2 or 3 weeks ago when Clemson was still unranked. Like, and Clemson shouldn't be ranked now. So,
Agreed.
I mean, I think Clemson should be ranked. They beat North Carolina. I'm about to explain it to you if you'd let me talk.
Oh,
I let you have your talk and let me have mine. Look, Clemson started off the season extremely rough. All right, with that loss to Duke. Duke ended up being a lot better team at the beginning of the year than we all gave them credit for at the time of the loss. All right. So we were all looking at it like, wow, Clemson lost to Duke. We were talking about Duke the rest of the year in positive notions. So I can't really hold that loss against them. Secondly, they lost to Florida State with Jordan Travis in overtime, losing by 7. They beat Notre Dame, okay, which is a solid football team. They beat a ranked North Carolina, who is still sitting at 8-3. Okay, this Clemson team, I think they do deserve to be ranked because Clemson plays any of those teams around them in a game, they're kicking their ass. Plain and simple. Tell me I'm wrong. I know that rankings have nothing to do with bowl games.
I don't agree with that sentiment because first off, they played NC State and they lost to them. So like I don't think they beat everybody around them. And I think the other thing too is that I see the narrative being painted here because yes, Clemson beat a ranked North Carolina team last week. You see North Carolina here now? You do not. Do you know why? Because NC State plays North Carolina this week, and if North Carolina gets a win there, they are going to move North Carolina right on back into the top 25 because it was a ranked win. And that's just the problem with doing the rankings these way, give me the top 25 teams every single time. I don't care about the conferences and beating up on each other. And like, that's just so nasty to me. Tennessee, you see it there. Their best wins Kentucky, NC State. They got a good Clemson win under their belt. And then Clemson, they do have a good win under their belt. I'm not all the way like mad about Clemson being in the top 25. They can be there, I guess. But the only reason they're in there is because they put NC State at 22. They was like, we have to justify it because NC State beat them head to head. That's the thing that I don't like about this whole the way they do the rankings in that back half. And I did want to just address Ed's first comment real quick. He mentioned that, Florida State, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Washington all have trash schedules. Ed, I understand some of what you're saying, but at what point is it not a trash schedule? Because like Florida State, it's not their fault that a lot of their schedule has gone by the wayside. Like Clemson was supposed to be a good conference win. They beat LSU at the beginning of the year, and that was supposed to be a great win. It's just that LSU has lost some other games along the way. Ohio State, same thing. They have 3 ranked wins so far. Michigan has a ranked win versus Penn State, and they're playing Ohio State today. So I get the non-conference stuff can be weak, but tell me who has a good schedule, and I kind of can understand a little bit more of where you're coming from.
So here's my thing, and I've been a big proponent of this since we started doing wire to wire 3 years ago. They have to come out with something that differentiates you beating a ranked team who was ranked. This is why I hate preseason rankings, because most of the time it's throw the big name programs in there and then it sorts itself out and see what happens. Mm-hmm. The problem you have is you have a team like Clemson who was ranked, what, 8th to start the year? Like, who was really paying attention to that at the beginning of the year? You're like, okay, Clemson's 8. Clemson's always pretty good. Like, okay. There's no correction for the fact that the people who voted for that crap at the beginning of the year were over 20 spots wrong. Clemson's not a top 10 team in this country, not even close. But if you played them in the first 2 weeks of the season, you get credit for a huge ranked win when you shouldn't have, because they're not that good. So first off, get rid of the preseason rankings. Just get rid of them, because there's too many teams come the end of the year that sit there and hang their hat on this resume of being like, hey, oh, well, we beat Duke week 3 after they beat a bad Clemson team and when their star quarterback was healthy. Okay, that's great, but then Duke proceeded to not play well down the stretch, lose their star quarterback. There just has to be a way to weight everything. Like, I just don't. It just boggles my mind. At the end of the year, we have teams that sit here and be like, "Oh, well, in week 2 we did this." Okay, well, yeah, week 2 you beat Kentucky, who was 2-0, and they were ranked like 10th, and that was before they started playing the meat of their schedule, and they lost 5 of 6, and we all figured out Kentucky's not a good football team. Like that stuff drives me bonkers. If you beat a team like for instance, Ohio State beat Notre Dame. Alex just brought them up as well. Notre Dame's been solid in the 15 to 20 range the whole year. Cool. Ohio State, check that box for them. They have a huge ranked win. Same thing with Florida State beating LSU. Was it as good as we thought it was going to be? No, but LSU is still ranked, and they probably still should be ranked. Cool. Check that box for LSU. Check the box for Michigan and Penn State. But all these teams that get these huge resume building wins week 2 against a team who ends up with 6 losses, like, that can't hold weight for me anymore. And it elevates some of these teams too much to where you get in these dumb arguments. And it's kind of gets back to like the Tennessee thing. Like who did you beat? That's what I mean. Like, everybody's like, oh, like week 5, Kentucky looked like an okay win. But then Kentucky got into the meat of their SEC schedule, and you saw what they really were. They stink. Like, Tennessee is not beating a good football team this year. I don't care about just their losses. It has to be about more than who you lose to. It's got to be about also who you beat. They have not beat a good football team this year. Not one. You can't look at their resume. I guarantee you everybody below them has a better win than they do and has less losses. That's crazy to me. And it's all because they play in the SEC and the SEC East, which is bad this year, if we're being honest. It's Georgia and everybody else. We've said that from the get-go this year. The SEC East is trash. Florida is nowhere near what they usually are. Kentucky stinks. Tennessee stinks.
So, Alex, I guess my question for you would be, because I know you play devil's advocate with Tennessee. Is there anybody in the top 25 that shouldn't be there, in your opinion? Or you think they got it right?
I like your guys' argument to get NC State out of there. Again, sitting at 8-3, I feel like 20 through 25 you could nitpick pretty easily. No, this is the first time, I even wrote it in my notes, this is the first time I'm actually okay with the full top 25. Like I said, you can nitpick if you want to, 20 through 25, but ultimately, I'm actually okay with the list. Not to mention, I'm not really focusing on anything outside the top 10 right now, just with college football playoff coming up and with the conference championships. Literally 11 through 25 until next year is kind of erroneous. It doesn't really matter to me. But I'm okay with Clemson being there. Like I said, they beat a great Notre Dame team. They're playing a lot better down the stretch. Tennessee, I think them and I think Tennessee should probably swap with Liberty. Liberty's been on fire, 11-0. There's no way Liberty should only be at 25. That'd probably be my only gripe, is bump those boys up a little bit.
I'll say this from two. Go ahead.
I was just going to say Tulane and Liberty are the two schools where I would show them a bit more love, especially Tennessee. I don't think should be there at all. So, I mean, if you're going to have Tennessee in there, they should be at 25. And you're right, Alex. You are starting to nitpick at that point. My biggest issue with it, though, like I said, I'm okay with Clemson, but Clemson is only in there at that spot because NC State is at 22. Like, that's my whole biggest issue with it, because had Clemson had not played NC State, I'd be okay with them being ranked, but they're only ranked because NC State beat them, and they had to throw them in the rankings. Like I'm with you. Notre Dame at this point is a good win. This isn't the same Clemson team that lost to Duke at the beginning of the season. And you could argue that they should have beat Florida State. That was on Dabo and his decision making in that game. So, like, I'm okay with Clemson. I just don't like how they do things over there. It's very narrative based, and I hate that. It's not giving me my top 25 teams in the country.
Yeah, like I'll say it this way: like, put Tulane or Liberty on a neutral field against Oklahoma State, Tennessee, NC State, or Clemson, and I'm telling you, it's a good football game. Like, you can't tell me unequivocally that all 5 of those teams are better than Liberty or Tulane. You just can't. So we'll see. Again, a lot of this, Ed is right a little bit. A lot of this is going to take care of itself, and we've talked about that numerous times. Ohio State or Michigan, one of them is done after today. Washington or Oregon, one of them is done after next weekend.
Georgia, Alabama.
Alabama is going to take care of itself. There is the question: is Georgia sneaking in the back end? I think they need a lot of help. I don't either. I think they need a lot of help for that to happen. And then obviously Florida State has its own, holds its own destiny in its hands, so they control it. So this is going to get a lot more fun, obviously, the next 14 days. But I think I'm still happy we're going to 12 teams next year, because at least the argument for not getting it right will obviously go away, because if you're in the top 12 and you get a chance and then you lose, you have no more excuses after that. So,
hey, let's go.
You're welcome. Happy Thanksgiving.
That's right. We're contenders. We ain't no longer outside the club. We're already in.
Well, you're good. In.
Welcome back.
Yeah, you have like a temporary. We're on like a month-to-month lease with you right now. We'll see what happens.
More like week to week.
Yeah, it's gonna be week to week. So obviously we moved Oregon back. We moved Alabama back. I think it's very clear, even regardless of what happens later today with Michigan, Ohio State. I think these are the top 8 teams in the country. I think they have obviously proven that and kind of separate themselves from everybody else. Louisville, isn't crossed off yet, but I think we all agree there's no way Louisville makes the playoff if they win the ACC, which I think is a shame. But considering,
I think there is a scenario. There is a scenario, but it would require Iowa to win the championship against Michigan or Ohio State. I'm just saying there is a chance. There is a chance.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I think Ohio State or Michigan could lose their starting quarterback and their backup quarterback and still beat Iowa.
Yeah, because Iowa's just not going to score in either one of those defenses. That's the long shot of all long shots.
You score 14 points, you guarantee to win versus Iowa.
That is true, and that's the thing. And I think you see that reflective in the lines already. Michigan or Ohio State get to 14 to 17 points in that game is over. I can't see any scenario Iowa with a backup quarterback scores more points on either one of those defenses. They're both top 3 defenses in the country. I just don't see it. But that being said, we got Washington, Oregon, still Georgia, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Florida State, Michigan. I think this is where we are. I think your national champion 100% comes from that group. And I think,
for sure.
So I think that's, we have it right. And, we'll see which 4 of these make the playoff. And that's all going to be decided here in the next 10 days or so. And like I said, we moved Oregon and Alabama back over. They're going to have their shots. Alabama's going to play Georgia and Oregon's going to play Washington. And we'll see where it goes from there. We haven't talked about Texas at all. Texas is kind of the weird one, just kind of hanging around here.
Hey, Arch Manning got in last night. I don't know if y'all
he did.
Y'all saw that. 2 for 5, like 35 yards, I think it was.
He had a nice little run on 3rd down for 1st down as well. Use his feet a little bit.
It's a nice appearance to make before he transfers out.
Facts.
Honestly, I think that was a smart decision. I think that was a move by Sark to try to be like, hey, we still want you in our program. We still want you in our future. So I think giving him a little bit of play time was to give the kid a little confidence. Obviously, last night's game was no way in contention, especially after halftime. Texas kind of ran away with it. But it was good to see him get his feet wet, get in the game a little bit. So I am excited. Texas plays Oklahoma State next week. Is that who they have in the championship right now?
I don't know. Is that?
It's not Oklahoma?
I don't think it's
No,
been
it's
determined
Oklahoma.
yet.
I think it's Oklahoma State.
I think they have to win today, though.
Okay, is that what it is? I'm double checking
so.
right now. Yep, it's still to be determined with the Big 12.
I think if Oklahoma State wins today, it's them. If they lose, I think it's Oklahoma.
Those will both be good games.
Should be.
They're blowing Oklahoma State out, in my opinion. I think Oklahoma is the game. I think if Texas is smart, they're wanting Oklahoma to get there.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes, and just like he said, I don't think Oklahoma State loses to BYU today, so I think it's going to be a Texas Oklahoma State. That's just me.
BYU gave Oklahoma everything they could handle and then some last week. I mean, it's
but that's
BYU.
Oklahoma. Oklahoma does that against crappy teams. We had the discussion earlier in the year, Bill, when you were like, "Oh, Oklahoma's got a cakewalk today," and I was like, "Are you sure?" And who is it? UCF. They beat UCF by like 3 points. So Oklahoma plays shitty against shitty teams and plays good against good teams. So I'm not really.
You remember when Oklahoma State lost by 30 on their home stadium by Cincinnati, who's a 4-win team? Do you remember that?
I do remember that. Yeah,
that did happen.
So. But listen, this is going to be, this is kind of where it's going to be, obviously, until later today. And then next week it gets real interesting. This will be down to 7, I guess, next week.
We'll probably be less than that next week, right?
We'll be down to 6. We'll be down to 6 when we come on the air next week.
Yeah, because Friday we got the Oregon-Washington game. I hate that they do that, though. I hate that they put it on a Friday.
It's kind of smart because the Big Ten has that 8 o'clock time slot locked down on Saturday. And
the SEC is going at, 4, right?
They go like 4:30, I think, 4:30. So you guys don't want to play at 1, which is going to be
10 a.m.
10 o'clock your time. You don't want to start a conference championship game on an off hour like that between two teams. So in my opinion, it's a smart move by the Pac-12. Maybe we'll do another special edition, Alex, just for you.
Just for you, buddy.
We definitely got to. Or I'm hopping on here by myself and just talking about how Oregon by 55. all by my lonesome. Nobody to argue. I'll argue with myself. Oregon by 55. No, Oregon by 70. Well, it'll be a good time.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this up. There's no real debates today. Alex finally got his way, and
I'm very happy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. You're welcome. That's my Christmas gift to you.
A little early for Christmas, Bill, but I'll take it.
Well, I have to, because in case they lose next week, then I can't.
Not him 34. The spread on the game is Michigan minus 3.5.
Yes.
3.5. Oh, Rutgers, 46.5, I think.
Yeah, 46. Depending on where you get it, 46.5, 47.5.
Which, in my opinion, I think it's probably a little high, but we'll see.
I think it's high, but then again, it's also part of it where I'm like, is that enough? Like, I think that's a smart line.
It's
these
smart.
These games get high scoring even when we have great defenses as well.
Yeah, I mean it's smart as in, because you look at the last 2 years have been a very similar like build up to it, and then obviously we've been in the 40s. We've been up in the almost the 70s for over under when it's all said and done.
Yep.
I think this year's a little bit different, but
I agree, but I know how this game goes. Like
I agree 100%. So let's get started on previews here. A&M, coachless A&M still haven't named their coach. LSU 8-3, down in Death Valley. Couple guys from A&M have already hit the portal. Couple guys, I believe, Cacho, you'll probably know this. I think either one or like two of their top 4 receivers are not even traveling with the team. I think this sets up for a really big LSU win. They'll get to 9-3. I think Jaden Daniels is going to put up another show and try to keep his name in that Heisman race. I like LSU at home here. I think A&M, no coach, shorthanded. Like I said, I know they're not. I know there's a couple kids on their team not traveling that have already announced they're going to hit the portal. I think this is kind of we're done after this regardless type game. I don't know really what to expect from A&M, but I think LSU rolls at home.
Evan Stewart is the receiver that you're talking about. I will say he has been hurt pretty much off and on this entire season. So he has been in and out of that lineup. It's definitely weird that he didn't travel to the game. He was their highly touted receiver in that 2022 class.
Okay.
He was a 5-star kid. I think next year, he's going to be one of the first receivers off the board for the 2025 class. He's that special. I could easily see him hitting the portal. I think it depends on how everything shakes out, though. I do think him and Wegman coming in together, they're going to have that connection. So if he leaves, I think you could also see Connor leave as well. But the other thing that's interesting with this A&M team is that Max Johnson is not dressed for this game today. So they're going to be rolling with their 3rd-string quarterback out there. And I think that's it could potentially be a recipe for disaster for them. But I actually think this A&M team plays in some inspired football today. Their defense is what they are predicated on over there at A&M. And I think they're going to have Jaden Daniels struggle a bit. They get after the quarterback very well, and they're going to get him off of his spots. So I think this is still going to be a good game, even with all the deficiencies that A&M has right now with players not being there. They still have a ton of talent at the receiver position. Anaya Smith, Jade Walker, both those guys can give you 100 yards any given night. So I think A&M keeps this game close. Ultimately, I got LSU winning because I think they got better quarterback play, and if they need that play to be made, I trust Jaden Daniels more than pretty much anybody in the country right now, especially with the way he's playing. So I think A&M keeps it close, but I ultimately got LSU taking the win.
Yeah, man. I mean, Jaden Daniels. That's really all you can say about this LSU team, and he gets a lot of focus on him, and as he deserves. But let's not forget, he's got 2,000-yard receivers on the outside with Neighbors and Thomas Jr. They're also number one points per game in the country. The only team that's actually better than Oregon in offensive stats this season. A&M, though, on the other hand, are 1-2 in the last 3 games. But 2 of those losses were by 1 possession to, I say ranked loosely when I say Tennessee. They lost a 1-possession game to Tennessee, but they also lost a really good, really hard-fought game to Alabama. And that was really right before Jalen Miller really took off and became, as big of a runner as he is now. In that game, he had 8 carries for negative 31 yards. Granted, I know that sacks count against rushing totals in college, so that number is a bit skewed. But that was the last game that Jalen Miller really had a struggle, was against this Texas A&M defense. And I do think that Texas A&M has the defensive talent and the defensive speed to keep Jalen Daniels in the pocket. I do expect Jaden Daniels to have probably over 400 yards passing today. I don't think he's going to be as prolific on the ground as he has previous weeks. I do think the LSU is going to win this game. However, I do A&M's offense the last 3 weeks, they haven't scored less than 30 points in 4 straight games. LSU's defense is terrible, as we've seen. Jaden Daniels is the only reason that they're sitting at 8 wins this season. If it wasn't for him, they would probably be more along the line of 6-5. Is that a fair assessment with how bad LSU's defense has been this year?
Agree 1,000%.
Yep. Cool. So I would say that A&M does have a lot of success today. Let me see. Who is it that's playing quarterback? He had a really great week last week. What was his name? Jalen Henderson is going to be playing a quarterback today. He's a little bit more mobile than they've had this season. 12 rushes, 60 yards, 2 touchdowns a couple weeks ago. Last week they played ACU, which are Abilene Christian. I didn't expect him to try to use his legs much in a game like that. But I do expect this game to be close. I do think LSU does win this game, especially being at home. I think it's a 3-point game. A&M finds a way to cover, or not covering. Well, A&M does find a way to cover, but they find a way to score. And this game is going to be close in the 4th quarter. And Jaden Daniels' playmaking ability is going to be ultimately what wins this game. But I think A&M puts up a hell of a fight.
Agreed 100%. And Alex, I know you were watching the A&M Mississippi State game because you saw it just like I saw it. Henderson, he's a great athlete. He's gonna make some plays out there.
What
Bill, who you got?
I like LSU.
Big.
Okay.
Big.
The Iron Bowl, number 8 Alabama, going to Jordan O'Hara Stadium. I would say maybe a slightly disappointing 6-5 Auburn team. Not sure. Obviously, they're rebuilding, but they've shown flashes of, I guess, what they could be, and they've also shown flashes of what they are, like losing at home to New Mexico last week.
Called it.
This is, I think the spread's like 14.5, something like that, 13.5, somewhere around there. I know this game has its moments where it gets weird and the underdog, pulls off the miracle and stuff like that. I don't see it today. I don't. I think Alabama's playing way too well. I don't think Auburn has that type of game where they're going to be able to play 60 minutes of football. What it requires to beat this Alabama team the way they're playing right now. This is another one. I think Alabama big. I think Jalen Milroe and them is just they've hit their stride. The offense is kind of dialed in right now. The defense is still getting better. I don't think Auburn's going to be able to move the ball consistently against that defense. And the RPO with Milroe, as confident as he's playing right now and the way Saban's coaching them up, I like Alabama big here.
Yeah, I mean, lately it seems like they've been 2 touchdown spreads every single time Bama steps on the field the last few weeks, and they've been covering every single time. Jalen Milroe is playing out of his mind right now, and he couldn't be doing it at a better time going into the SEC championship game next week. However, they can't look past Auburn. Auburn's averaging 194 yards on the ground per game. They're going to try to control the clock. They don't have a quarterback that's going to be able to beat Alabama defense with that Alabama defense. Auburn's not quite in that playmaking capabilities this season, as you can see in that 6-5 record, but they are going to run the hell out of the ball. Auburn's the type of team that even down 2 scores, 3 scores, they're still going to continue with their own brand of football, which is smash mouth ball. And I think that they can honestly control the clock against this Alabama front, especially in a rivalry game on the road for Bama. Anything can happen. We've seen it in the past. I do agree with Bill that Bama covers it is now 14-point spread. Last night it was 13. Now it has to jump to 14. I do think that that's going to hit pretty easily. But I do think that it is a one-possession game at halftime with Auburn having a lot of success on the ground and controlling the clock. I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn doubles Alabama's time of possession in the first half to try to keep that score down. I think my best bet on this game is honestly going to be the under. Which I believe, do you guys happen to know what that's at right now?
I
just had it.
Look there.
I lost it. No, I got it right here. Yeah, the over-under is 47.5. I honestly think with Auburn running the ball, trying to control the line of scrimmage and control the clock, I think that 47.5, the under, is the best bet here, and Alabama does cover.
And then for me, I really feel like this game will be close. I think the biggest thing though with this game, I think it's going to be close because of all the reasons that Alex said. I do think Auburn is going to try and control the clock here, and I think they're going to run the ball and try to be very effective there. You saw the game with Auburn against Georgia, and they tried to keep that time of possession. They tried to keep the ball out of Georgia's hands offensively, and for the most part it worked. But at the end of the day, when they needed to go out there and make a play, Georgia defense stood pat because Auburn doesn't have those guys to go out there and make that play. Now, I think the key to victory against this Bama team is forcing the ball downfield. Bama is very susceptible to give up the big play. The problem is Oregon. Auburn doesn't have the players to take care of that against this Bama team. So I do think Auburn will keep this game close. I love the pick of the under here, actually, Alex. That's a great point. And I actually think Auburn covers this game, but I don't see a way for Alabama to lose this game. Like, I don't see a path of victory for this Auburn team with the way that they've played all year. I think at some point this game will get out of hand, and Bama is going to force Auburn to start throwing the ball more than they want to. But at that point, I just think Bama kind of sits on it. I think Auburn keeps it within 2 touchdowns. I think they lose by, 10, 13 points. But, I got the Crimson Tide, taking care of business here and moving on to that SEC championship game.
I agree, and that's the biggest factor for me. I just don't. You said it perfectly. I don't see a way forward where they play 60 minutes and they have a path to just outplay this team for 60 minutes. I just don't see it. Next game up, the Apple Cup.
The Apple Cup.
Washington State 5-6, another team who started out hot, and we had high hopes of Cam Ward in that offense moving, and Kerplunk fell right into the water and started to drown. 11-0 Washington. This is a game you would think, again, I know it's a rivalry game. This is a game you would think Washington would win comfortably at home, last home game of the year, assuming it's senior day. They should go out with a bang. This is a game, again, and we talk about it next week. They should win by double digits easily. I'm very curious to see how this game plays out. And the reason I say that is not that they run it as efficiently as Oregon or anything like that. They run a similar offense to Oregon. Cam Ward is a mobile quarterback that can make throws, hand the ball off, and still make plays with his feet. I think Washington wins. I don't know how impressive it is. I'll say they win by 10, somewhere along there. And I'll say that Washington State probably hangs in this football game longer than they should. I just think it's Washington's MO. To some degree, too, you could point to it and say it's a plus for Washington because they're used to playing in tight games and they don't get flustered. That's a fair point. I'll listen to it, and it's true. Because at some point to win a national championship, you're probably going to have to play in a tight game. It's a valid argument. I also just think if you play in too many of them, eventually you lose one. I don't think they lose today. I don't think there's like a shot they lose today. I just don't think they win as comfortably as they should. But I still think Washington takes care of business, locks down that 4 seed, for the time being, and they go to Las Vegas to play the Ducks next week, and we'll settle it once and for all.
If Washington State had the resemblance of anything close to a run game, I would say that this game, is up in the air. These Washington State, Oregon State battles in the Pacific Northwest, you grew up on them. And they are, iconic to kind of our childhoods growing up was, Washington State, Oregon State. And I look at these two teams playing each other in the Apple Cup, and I see Cam Ward versus Michael Penix Jr. Earlier in the year, I was saying how Washington is kind of one-dimensional. They don't really have a run game. Well, lately, they've been kicking ass in the run game. And Dylan Johnson hasn't really picking it up, averaging 4.5 yards per carry over the last few games. But where Washington State struggles is on the ground. They're averaging 3.2 yards per carry on the season. Their highest their highest yardage back is 256 yards, and they don't even have 1,000 yards on the season. That's pretty dang bad on the ground. I mean, if you want to define one-dimensional, you're going to say Washington State, and that's ultimately why I have Washington absolutely destroying State today. I said Washington State could kind of control the ground game, control the clock, keep the game close, and have Cam Ward beat you over the top because he has some great numbers this year. Very similar, actually, to Michael Penix. If you actually compare them side by side, they're not far off. Cam Ward having fewer interceptions even. But because of that lack of run game, Washington's going to take care of business. I know you guys probably don't remember, but us Northwesterners do. 2 years ago, Washington State beat Washington by the largest margin of victory in the Apple Cup history. Washington State planted their flag in Seattle on the 50-yard line. This is the first game Washington has hosted in this rivalry since then. Washington has not forgotten. That is personal. Washington by 28.
Yeah, so I don't know if they win by quite 28. I do think Washington
28, Cottrell. 28.
I do think Washington takes care of business here. The one thing, though, that I have a little bit of caution of saying it's just a full blowout here is that I think Washington at this point can finally exhale. Like, obviously, last week was the Oregon State game, and they had, everything on the line there. They were the underdogs going into that game. They lost that game. I mean, there would have been questions like, even if they win the Pac-12, are they going to make it to the college football playoff? They can finally let out that exhale, and that's happening at the same time as, hey, we got 5-6 Washington State this week at home. Yes, it's senior day, but we know what's coming next week. We got a trip to Vegas for all the marbles against Bo Nix and those Oregon Ducks over there. We beat them once. We're going to go out there. We're going to do it again. They're saying we're a 7.5-point dog with these early lines. Well, guess what? We're going to go out to Vegas and we're going to show them what we got. Meanwhile, Washington State's here like, oh, we're 5-6 here, and we got Cam Ward, who's very explosive. And if we find a way to steal this game, we're going to be bowl eligible, and it's not going to be the last game for those seniors on this team. We just kicked the shit out of Colorado, and we're not ready to be done playing football yet. So I think Washington is going to fight in this game. I always forget the kid's name. Number 1 for Washington that plays corner for them. He's absolutely incredible. I think Cam Ward, if he's smart, keeps the ball away from him. But outside of that, you can throw the ball all over the yard against that Washington defense. I think if you attack
Muhammad,
the other side,
not.
Yes, Muhammad is the kid's last name.
He's
incredible.
Very good.
He is an incredible corner. But outside of that, you can throw the ball across the middle of the field. You could throw the ball over top against that Washington team. And I think Washington State's going to have some success doing that. So I think this is a game where Washington wins by 2 possessions, 14, maybe 17 points, make early, 3 possessions. But I think Washington State's going to make this one still pretty entertaining to watch. I think they're going to have success on offense.
All right. Now, this is, if you look at it on paper, you think this is kind of a yawn game, and I will tell you it's not. Number 1, this is one of those deep-seated rivalries that goes back a long time. Teams do not like each other. Interstate makes it even worse. Florida coming in here, needing this game to be bowl eligible. Billy Napier needs this win. I will tell you that point blank. We thought he was on the hot seat at the very beginning of the year, and then he had a big win or 2 in a row, and then they went right back in the toilet. They sit here in 5-6. Billy Napier needs this win. This team needs this win. I would say for the Gators, no pun intended here, not to make it weird, but they probably smell blood in the water here with Florida State. Coming in here, backup quarterback, only a week to prepare. I don't want to say I'm going to pick it outright, but this game, I think it's a really dangerous game for Florida State. If this kid was starting at home, I would have liked it a little bit better to have the stadium behind him, and going into the swamp, your first true start. Yikes! It's going to be interesting. This may or may not be my upset alert game later. This game, there's a lot of things you could say about this game. There's a lot of storylines here. Obviously, we already talked about it with Florida State. Florida State cannot lose this game. If they do, for all intents and purposes, their season's over. And Florida needs to be bowl eligible. I don't know. Me and Cottrell were kind of critical at the beginning of the year. I don't know if Billy Napier survives if he's 5-7. I don't.
He shouldn't.
Yeah, I agree.
In a program like that, it's not like he's coming off of, like a 1-10 season and he's first year hired. You know what I mean?
I agree. 5-7, no bowl game. Like I said, I don't know if he survives that. Curious to see what both of you guys think about this game. My gut tells me somehow Florida State wins this game. I don't know how. I don't know why. I think they at least get to the Louisville game, but I wouldn't be shocked if Florida wins either. Not at home.
So I definitely want to go first here because I feel like
Cottrell jumped right in there.
I'm gonna be the one to do it. I'm picking Florida here. I'm picking them to win this football game. I think everything we talked about with the rankings and even, eliminator, I think it's all a moot point. I think Florida State is going to lose, and that's going to open up a spot for Oregon no matter what, create a win and in scenario for them. And we have nothing to really talk about here. I think the way that Florida looks now, these past few weeks, obviously they haven't been great, but like just seeing how hard they played a Missouri team last week, even after Graham Mertz got hurt in that game, I think that says a lot. Florida's a team that runs the ball, and if they can run the ball effectively, they're going to have success. And you've seen it earlier in games this year against this Florida State team when they've been going up against some more like inferior opponents and going up against like a Boston College or, some of these other games that they've struggled in. They've given up plenty of yards on the ground. And so I think that with Florida, as long as Trevor Etienne comes out and he plays very well, Montrell Johnson had a good game last week as well. I think Max Brown's going to be in a spot where they really ask him to just manage the game rather than go out there and win them that football game. And on the other side of it for Florida State, you don't know what you're getting out there with that quarterback. If Tate needs to go out there and win the game, is he capable of doing that against that Florida team? I don't know. But I think Florida, they will win this game, get them bowl eligible, and that buys Billy Napier another season there. So I'm rolling with the Gators to knock off the 11-0 Seminoles.
One outright pick. There it is.
And just like you guys said, I mean, no Jordan Travis. Obviously, hope healing for him goes well as the ankle king, ankle doctor king over here. I can definitely let you know that's going to be a little bit of a recovery time for him. But I think Jordan Travis, he's got the work ethic to get back in, take the NFL by storm next year. We'll see what happens. Graham Mertz going balls to the walls for his guys, diving for a first down, breaking his collarbone. Honestly, he went out like a true teammate, putting his body on the line for his Florida teammates there. Max Brown is going to be starting today for Florida. He's a dual threat guy that can really extend drives, and he really put Florida in a chance to win against Missouri last week, with that final drive. And then we got Rodemaker starting for Florida State. He's essentially been at Florida State for 4 years. He's been a backup all 4 years. I think he redshirted his freshman year, if I'm not mistaken.
He did.
And he's got limited work, and he's not a running threat. He really handicaps Florida State's offensive. Sorry, I can't talk today. He really kind of handicaps Florida State's offensive potency, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be a steady dose of Florida's run game with Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson, who both have 710 yards on the season. So today's game is going to determine who's going to be the leading rusher on the team. And I think those guys know they're tied going into the game. And I expect Montrell and Trevor to have absolutely huge monstrous games today against Florida State. For me, though, picking this game, it's kind of murky because Florida State is undefeated. They have beaten some solid teams this year. They got the ACC championship and looking forward to next year. However, Florida, they need to win to make a bowl game. You have Max Brown, who's a true freshman. Does he really understand the pressure of the situation, or is he going to go out there and just ball out? Which is what I expect him to do. My best bet for this game is going to be the under. Right now it's at 49.5. I think Max Brown and Rodemaker do struggle in the first half, getting the ball down up and down the field. And I think that's ultimately going to lead to a lower scoring game. I think the final score is something like 21-17. I got 38 points in the game. And I do think Florida State pulls it out. Ultimately, I have to wait one more week for Florida State to lose to get Oregon jumped up to where they need to be. I do have Florida State winning, though, but I think that the under is the best bet, and Florida is going to cover.
Alex, I thought you were going to go full-fledged
nope.
Out there.
Nope. I can't, man. I can't do it. This Florida team, like I said, I haven't seen enough of Max Brown. I like what I've seen, but Florida State, their defense, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how this game goes, especially being in the swamp. But I think Florida's going to cover this game. I'm more confident on the under. I was trying to find that one stat that really pointed me in one direction, and I couldn't find it. So
the true problem with Florida is that they've sucked for the majority of the year, and now their offense has finally come around. I know they haven't played anybody these last few weeks here, even with Graham Mertz. The last 3 weeks, even after that Georgia game, their offense has been better. Against LSU, and I know LSU's not the measuring stick here, but they were able to move the ball pretty effectively and put points up on the board. And same thing with Missouri last week. So I think they're going to be able to pull it off. If they played this way, if they would have played this way all season, they're probably sitting at like 7-4 with a chance to have 8 wins on the season. But that just wasn't the case. So
I don't disagree with that, but I think is as much as Graham Mertz has kind of been the whipping boy of this show for the year. The last 3 weeks he played pretty well. Like he extended the field a little bit. It wasn't dumping everything off as much, and they were starting to look a little better. And I think that's one point that Alex brought up that is important. That I didn't even mention in my preview. Florida's starting to back up quarterback too. So it's in regards to the under. I actually kind of love the underplay because I think this has a chance to be like 10-3 at half. I think both offenses are going to try to run the ball. I think both defenses know that. Florida's got ETN, obviously. I feel like he's been there forever at this point. But, I think Florida probably feels a little bit better about their run game than Florida State does. But, I think it has a chance to be a lower scoring game. I do. I think Alex brought up a really good point there. You're gonna have two backup quarterbacks, in starting in a really big game. So, keep an eye on this one. I think it's a very interesting football game to turn on later this afternoon.
All right, well let's get the people what they want. Let's let everybody knows why we're here today. Like
the main course,
every single year, you know what you're doing on Saturday after Thanksgiving at noon. You're watching the best football game of the year every year.
And I don't think today's going to disappoint. I think you have two very good football teams, two elite football teams, two elite defenses, both top 3 in the country in almost every statistical category. Two offenses that have weapons, prefer to beat you in kind of different ways, and talent, and everything all over the field. I think if you listened to Boo Callahan last week when he was, talking to ESPN, he said it was, this game is obviously going to settle who's going to get in and who's not. But the way the committee ranked it, they ranked Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan as the 3 elite teams, and they kind of ranked everybody else as a step below the 3 of them. So, again, I wish this was a year where, and I mean this regardless if we win or lose today, because I do think Ohio State is one of the best 4 or 5 teams in the country. I wish this was a 12-team, playoff this year, because I don't think the loser of this game should be out. But that's just the harsh reality, and that's going to be what it's going to be. I think a lot of people are bringing up the Jim Harbaugh situation, and I think it matters. I've said that from the get-go. I also think Michigan's a very senior-laden team. They have over 40 seniors that are going to play on senior day today. And I think this being the first game at home without Harbaugh matters. I know they're playing the best team of the 3 they're going to play without him, but it's also going to be the first home game without him. And I think that matters. Penn State is obviously a horrible place to go play for anybody. And Maryland was tricky looking ahead to this game. I'm not going to get all crazy like I did on Wednesday. I'm just going to say it very simply. I think this is a very close game. I know we talked right before we came on air about it possibly going over. I still favor the under because I think both these defenses are that good. They both can take away what you want to do, and they can force you to do something that they defend very well on top of that. I think it's a lower scoring game. The key stat to this is always whoever rushes for more yards in this matchup usually wins the football game. And I think that advantage to Michigan. I think we're in a similar boat to where we were last year. I think Ohio State's a little bit better equipped to stop it this year. But I also think Michigan still has the advantage on both lines. I think they're a little bit more physical. I think they're a little bit better in every facet of the game other than wide receivers, where I think Ohio State has a huge edge. And I think it's a close football game, and that's what you're going to see. You're going to see 2 elite football teams play at 12 o'clock today. I think Michigan wins by a field goal. And I just my head and my gut match on this one. Usually it's one or the other, and I try to convince myself out of one or the other, but I think Michigan's just slightly better. and I think they're at home, and I think little things like that matter. So I'll take Michigan by a field goal.
I'm a little disappointed, Charlie. I know you're under the weather.
I'm under the weather.
You
I don't
gave
got
me
the
more
voice to yell at
mellow.
you today.
You gave me more mellow today. I'm gonna give the people what they want here. I'm gonna tell you how it is first.
Can't even breathe.
I had Ohio State winning 27. I believe I said 27-17. I think they're gonna win 2 possessions in this game. I do think the under will be the play here. I think that, with Ohio State, find a way to stop the explosive plays, which is obviously what killed them last year. That's been their MO all season. If you don't let Donovan or Blake break the long one, you're going to be in great shape pretty much all day. But then I had a dream last night. I had a dream about this game here.
Oh boy.
And it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. It didn't go with Ohio State winning by 2 possessions. The game went to overtime. And it came down
Varsity Blues.
It came down to Sherrone Moore made the executive decision that instead of Ohio State got the ball first, they kicked the field goal, they kicked the extra point, they were up by 7. Michigan went down, they scored. Sherrone Moore made the decision to go for 2. They didn't get it. Ohio State wins by 1 point, and a lot of celebration in my home. But with that said, I don't know if that's my mind telling me, hey, this game's going to be a tight one. This game will be tight. It's going to come down to the absolute last second. Because on Wednesday, I was singing a whole different tune. So I think my body was trying to tell me Ohio State is winning a tight one today. 1 point win for Ohio State off of a Sherrone Moore blunder. Maybe it's not in overtime, but there's a 2-point conversion that's need to be had, and Michigan does not convert. That's what I saw, so that's what I'm rolling with today.
Well, if that happens, you might need a new host next week because I will probably have a heart attack before the 2-point conversion. So this might be a 2-man show next week. Stay tuned for updates.
If that happens, I'm going to play lottery because I'm telling you, it was vivid. It was one of those vivid dreams.
I'll say this. I think it's going to come down. I do agree with Cottrell in this. I think it's going to come down to something little like that. I think these teams are that evenly matched. For lack of a better term, they're playing the same brand of football this year. This is not as much of an aerial attack that Ohio State's used to. Because again, Kyle McCord is not a bad quarterback. He doesn't stink. I'm not going to buy into that BS. He doesn't. He's a first-year starter playing on a team that had expectations through the roof. It is not easy to do. He still has. I don't care what the Heisman says or whatever. I still think Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best player in college football. I said that week 1 of the year. That's not me, riding Ohio State. He was my pick to win the Heisman. I stand behind that. I think he's the best prospect in the draft. And again, I say this all the time and everything. In big games like this, the little things matter, and little things usually dictate who wins these games. Could either one of these teams come out today and blow the other one out? Sure. I mean, they're both capable of doing it. I don't see it though. I really don't. I agree with Cottrell. It doesn't feel that way to me whatsoever. I think when you look at what they did against, similar competition, they're almost identical. Like it's across the board. These two teams are about as evenly matched as you can be. I think it's gonna be a great football game. I think you're gonna see it. I think the ratings are gonna be through the roof. It was the most watched football game last year of anybody. And I think it's gonna be the same thing this year. It's called the game for a reason. We don't need a fancy title for it, or
what it is.
You know what it is. It's the game. It's everything that there is in college football. So I think it's gonna be a great game. I'm excited to watch it. I hope we win, obviously. Just like I know Cottrell hopes they win, but I think it's gonna live up to the hype. I really do. And if Cottrell's dream is accurate, it goes to overtime, that's gonna be chaos. So it will be interesting. But I think Michigan has a couple advantages, small, but I think they can exploit them. And I think as long as Sherrone Moore doesn't get caught up in the moment too much, I mean, that is one intangible that it goes Ohio State's way. Ryan Day is used to coaching these games, and Sharon Moore is not. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited, nervous, all the same things, like I usually am. So nothing changes today, but we will let Covey get in on this because he's the unbiased panelist on this show in regards to this game. So Alex,
don't let me down, Alex.
I
you
believe,
see how much love I've been giving you recently.
I'm saying
recently. I have receipts, Cottrell. I have receipts.
Just remember, of all things, I've at least been honest with you from the get-go of this show. I know Cottrell Venmo'd you money earlier. I know what that's about.
Not enough, I'll tell you that.
I know. It's probably more than Connor Stallions was paying, but I'm just saying, just be unbiased here.
Justin said it.
Justin said Washington, I but I was right though. I wasn't hating. I was right. Don't be mad.
That's
I was
true.
right.
True. I picked Oregon, and I said it before the game. I said Oregon is the better team. Don't forget, Alex.
Look, y'all.
Don't be mad that I was right, Justin.
Alex, I brought you on this show. Do not disappoint.
I said Oregon is going to win.
All right.
And I said Florida's winning today. All right.
Pandemonium's been going crazy. So I'm looking at a couple things that are really telling for me. One, it feels like Ohio State has been prepping for this game the last 3 weeks, really since the Rutgers game. Absolutely dominating on defense, averaging 36 points per game over the last 3 games, allowing 3 points in the last 2. And when I look at Michigan, especially the last 2 games without Harbaugh there, they have ran the ball, they've only thrown the ball 31 times in the last 2 games. In a close game, if Ohio State gets up, Michigan is going to have to take some of the pressure off Blake Corum, who's only 112 yards away from 1,000 yards this season. I expect him to get there today, just saying that out loud. Ooh. But Michigan has not been throwing the ball lately. And obviously we know J.J. McCarthy has great arm talent. We saw it last year in the college football playoff. But he just has not been looking that – well, I can't really say he hasn't been looking great lately because he just hasn't been given the chance. The play calling is not as good as it was earlier in the season with Harbaugh, kind of at the helm. So it really concerns me that if they're going to rely on Blake Corum to win this game, Ohio State's going to run away with this. Okay, if J.J. McCarthy can get in rhythm early, get some short dump-off passes, spread the ball around, actually show that they're willing to do something besides run the ball 28 straight times like they're getting against Penn State, this is a game and Michigan has a chance to win. I just think Ohio State this season is too battle-tested. And J.J. McCarthy, against the last 2 weeks, has probably been Michigan's most challenging games of the season against sorry, I had it up. I had this really good point I was about to make, and I lost it because my phone powered off. Against Maryland, they lost by 7. They held Maryland to 17 rushing yards, and they only won by 7. Okay, this is what I'm saying. And yes, they were playing in Maryland. Yes, Maryland is a good team. I've been harping on them all season about how Talia is one of, I think, going to be great in the NFL. I've loved Maryland all season. I haven't picked Maryland against Ohio State. But after seeing comparatively, when Ohio State and Michigan played Penn State, I said to you guys, it's like watching the same exact team. But coming into this game, Michigan doesn't have their head coach. They have not been throwing the ball well the last couple of weeks, not because of McCarthy's inability, but because of the play calling. And I think the play calling today is ultimately what's going to catch up to Michigan, and Ohio State wins this game.
Give it to me, Alex. I love to hear it. I hope you didn't pull a reverse jinx on me because, you always pick against Ohio State and we find a way to come out on top. But I love to hear it. It's got me
honestly, I racked my brain last night on this game. I've been thinking about this game for about 2 weeks now, and really just looking comparatively, just Michigan has not been on all cylinders the last couple of weeks. Well, it looks like Ohio State has just gotten better in the last couple of weeks leading up to this game. And yes, this is essentially a bowl game for these two, and that's where J.J. McCarthy's playmaking capability and his big game experience from last season comes into play. And like I said, Michigan is not going to get blown out in this game, I do not think. And Michigan does have a hell of a chance to win this game. I think Blake Corum gets over 1,000 yards. I think he gets 2 touchdowns. But I do think Ohio State is ultimately going to win this game. And this losing Harbaugh, I think, is just going to be too much today.
Got me feeling good, Alex. You got me feeling good.
All right.
Sorry, Bill.
It's all right. Listen, I like when both of you are wrong at the same time. It makes it even better for me. I think you got to look at who they played the last 2 weeks. Just saying. But it's fine.
Yeah, this is because that is going to be prime Bill. I want my flowers. Bill likes to say, I told you so.
Facts.
So that's just what it is.
Flowers die. I told you so's last forever. They're like diamonds.
But if I keep getting more of them, you keep replacing the batch, I'll be okay.
I told you. Our listen. This is a first year show. Our flower budget is out for the year. You get no more flowers.
I haven't even gotten the flowers.
Better start
Can't afford.
Alex, you're 100% right. For everybody that watched the show last week, I gave you your flowers on Wire to Wire, though.
I heard you. I did hear you.
So that's not true.
That is right. All right. But I haven't gotten no Saturday flowers.
Big upset. Called the big upset last week over Auburn. Took them in Superdog. Said the game was going to be a close one, and it ended up not being a close one because New Mexico ran away with it. So,
All right. Well, we got 10 minutes here. Let's get into upset alert and pick 'em. I already kind of foreshadowed where I was going. I am going Florida State at Florida. I think it's ripe for it. Part of me, like I said, still thinks Florida State pulls the game out, but I think Florida State is unfortunately ripe for the picking today. I think it's a bad situation to go into the swamp with a backup quarterback, not having a couple, games before that to possibly prepare. It's a tough situation for Mike Norvell and the Seminoles today. So I'm going Florida State at Florida as my upset alert.
I'm also going Florida over Florida State as my upset alert. I hate to give you guys the same content here, but you heard my breakdown. I got Florida winning this game outright. I think that they are going to be able to run the ball over this Florida State team, and they're going to take care of business and get Billy to a bowl game this year. So I love that pick there. And I think if I want to give you a secondary one, because I'm using it in Pick'em as well, I like South Carolina to beat Clemson today.
Okay.
Jacqueline Hyde, Spencer Rather.
That's true. All right. So for my upset pick today, I'm going a little bit out there for this one, but I got Coastal Carolina beating James Madison today. Grayson Allen playing in his last game at Coastal. He could be entering the transfer portal next year.
Forever.
Facts.
Right? There's strong rumors about him entering the transfer portal, and with James Madison not being able to play for that Sun Belt title, Coastal Carolina and Appalachian State are tied right now to represent the East. Coastal Carolina does have the tiebreaker, so they have to win today in order to make that Sun Belt championship. And I think that's what's going to ultimately drive them to win this game today. So Coastal Carolina over James Madison, book it.
All right, well, let's get into Pick'em here. See where we're at.
I'm right on you, Shally, with the Super Dog. Better bring your A game this week.
I got it. So me and Gatrell will go quick here because, like I said, we give these on Wednesday. Then we'll give Alex his due time to get through his picks. Some of mine are easy. Like I said, I already took Penn State minus 20.5 at Michigan State. They won like 49-0 or something. So I'm already got a win on the board for this week, which is great. Second game, Alabama minus 14.5 at Auburn. We previewed that game earlier. I was very clear about that as well. I feel strongly. I think Alabama rolls in the Iron Bowl this year. I really do. Last but not least, I got UCLA minus 9.5 at home against California. California is not good. UCLA's defense has been playing great. Made Caleb Williams and USC look very ordinary last week. And they're able to run the ball offensively, and they're still throwing the ball well. So I think UCLA takes care of business easy today at home at UCLA. So I'm fully expecting a 3-0 week. And my super dog, well, actually, Cottrell, mathematically, you can't get me here, super dog, because we're taking the same one.
No, we're not.
Oh, did you change?
No, it was you and Gene. Had the same one.
Me
I
and
didn't
Gene,
have the same
yeah.
one.
I'm taking Colorado plus 21.5 at Utah. Again, I think Utah wins the game. I think they're out of steam. I think Colorado eventually here is going to put at least a decent game together. I think they score enough points to relatively stay in this. I think I snag a couple super dogs at the end. So those are my picks for the week.
Dude, Shadur's too busy planning the after party for the game to worry about winning.
Yeah.
I'll go quick here because again, we gave our picks on Wednesday. But first one, Florida plus 6.5 versus Florida State. Talk about it two other times already on this show. Not going to go into it. I think Florida wins the game outright, but give me the 6.5 cushion. Second game, the other game that I said I could potentially use for upset alert as well. I like South Carolina plus 7.5 versus Clemson. Spencer Rattler and company, they're going to play this Clemson team hard. They're going to be able to put up points against that Clemson-led defense. I don't know what Clemson team you're going to get today, but in these rivalry games, you saw what happened to Clemson last year, and South Carolina was not the better football team. And you saw how lopsided that game was. So I think Rattler's going to keep this game close, and I think South Carolina has a really good chance to win it. My last one, I'm going to the game. Give me Ohio State to cover the 3 points versus Michigan. And again, these are my picks on Wednesday. I've since had other vivid dreams that I don't know if this is the case anymore, but I'm still going to take it just to keep everything consistent. And then my super dog for this week, I like Washington State plus 16.5 at Washington. Like I said earlier when we were breaking down the game, I think Washington State's going to be able to put up points against that Washington defense. I think it's just going to be a matter of how much can they limit Michael Penix Jr., Odunze, and company. So I think they keep that game tight. I don't ever think Washington's in any real danger of losing that game, but I think that's going to give me the edge over Shally and Superdog this year.
All right. So I'm going to start with my 3 picks before I jump into Superdog. I'm going to start with the most basic pick first. I got Fresno State beating San Diego State at the -5 mark. Fresno State is head and shoulders better than San Diego State. 8-3 going into this game. San Diego State is flipped at 3-8. The fact that the spread is this close is pretty crazy to me because Fresno State has looked absolutely dominant this season. Next up, we got North Carolina at North Carolina State. With Drake May's last impression before possibly going into the NFL, I think he absolutely shows up and shows out. I got North Carolina covering that 2.5-point spread against North Carolina State. That one seems like my lock of the day, to be completely honest with you. And then my last pick is Kansas -7 versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati last week allowed 425 yards on the ground. Kansas, as we all know, averaging 202 yards per game on the ground. I think that Kansas runs the ball down Cincinnati's throat. Might even be up as much as 21 at halftime, and then they kind of coast the rest of the way. So Kansas -7 versus Cincinnati. Now, Super Dog. We talked about this a little bit earlier. We were talking about the standings and the rankings, and I didn't want to give away too much because you probably aren't expecting this pick. But Brock Bowers probably seeing the snap count. If he plays at all, he's probably seeing a limited amount of snaps today. Ladd McConkey did not suit up last week. Will he suit up today? We do not know. Georgia's 2 closest games this year, Auburn, which they won 27-20, and Missouri, which they won 30-21. Both those games have one thing in common, and that's the ability to run the ball against that Georgia defense. Auburn had 219 yards on the ground. Missouri had 151. Georgia Tech is a very run-heavy team. They're going to control the clock. I think they are going to have some success moving the ball against Georgia, and I do think that 24-point spread when Georgia is the visitors, especially giving some of their guys later in the game a little bit of breaks and not playing some of their more impactful offensive players today, I think that ultimately spells out Georgia Tech covering that 24-point spread today. I don't think they're going to win, but I think this is more like a 14-point game with the offensive players missing for Georgia and Georgia Tech's ability to run the ball successfully. I think that Georgia Tech does cover that 24-point spread, and that is my super dog for the day.
All righty. So that is today's show. Obviously, we'll be back probably sometime during the middle of the week, give a quick preview of the Pac-12 championship game because we don't want to miss that. I think Liberty plays, I think the Sun Belt Championships Friday night as well. I think there's another Friday night game. So we'll probably hop on in the middle of the week, preview those real quick for everybody. Then we'll be back next Saturday to do all the, the Power 5 and all the other ones. We're not going to miss any games here. So we'll do reviews next week as always. And the rankings next week will probably be interesting. See, where everybody moves to. And, that's about it for this week. You guys have any other closing statements?
No, I'm watching football, man.
Yeah, I'm glad we got out here. Alex, appreciate you hopping on early. I know it's a tough battle, especially with COVID. So appreciate that, and giving people plenty of time to get ready for the game. So
Again, everybody that was in the comments, Justin Louder, I mean, you have to be our number one fan. I mean, all day long. My guy, Big Head Ed, thank you for jumping in. Travis, my nephew, Jonathan David, JD. And then what?
You got the best comment of them all. Like, this is, I gotta leave with this one because it's a fact. Audience speaking facts.
Nobody ever cares about Ohio. Let's put it that way. And then one last thing, again, to close with. Everybody, I mean, if you're familiar with this show or everybody knows Gene. So Gene is letting his grandfather rest today, this morning. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Gene. You know, and me personally, I know both these guys as well. We're thinking about you and the family. So prayers as always. I know it's gonna be a rough day for you. So you know, we're thinking about you, buddy, and I hope you have a good day as possible. You know, your grandfather was a great man. So we love you. We're thinking about you. And we'll talk to you soon. Everybody else, we will see you next Saturday.
Praying for you, Gene.
Yep. One of us will be in a good mood. One of us will not. The game goes to overtime. This will be a 2-man show. Justin, maybe you can co-host because we will need one. And that's it. I hope everybody has a great day. I hope it's a great day of football. I hope none of these games, you know, don't live up to the hype, but I don't think that's going to be an issue. So enjoy your day, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
See you.